Well, we got this big shred day coming up on Saturday with OMNI Community Credit Union. How does that work? Well, you show up with documents that need to be shredded, presumably information on those documents that could be sensitive. And we're loaded with that stuff these days, and it piles up quickly. So between 10 and noon on Saturday at the OMNI branch, Capitol Avenue south of Beckley, we'll have one of those big shred trucks there. You can bring up to 2 boxes of materials to be shredded, paper. And I want to tell you, if you sat in front of the television there with the shredder, 3 or 4 pages at a time, it would take you hours if you have 2 boxes worth. This, they put it in a Herbie-Kirby. It lifts it into the truck. The whole thing is done in seconds. This time, there's going to be a special group there that also recycles securely electronics. So that's going to happen this week. We talked with the Better Business Bureau yesterday about the incidents of identity theft and shredding and that sort of thing. Today, we're going to welcome back our old friend, Luis Garcia, from the Internal Revenue Service to talk about it as well. Luis, good morning.
Good morning.
How goes it over there?
So far, so good.
All
but
right.
The day has only started, so.
Well, right. And these are subjects that you talk about, I would imagine, pretty regularly. I asked this of the Better Business Bureau yesterday. I'll ask you, too. Do you see the incidents of identity theft subsiding at all?
Well, we're seeing a decline, and we are, in fact, this year, this coming filing season, we are going to be incorporating some new techniques and filters, which will, we're pretty confident are going to have an even bigger dent into the identity theft tax refund scam.
Okay.
So that'll affect the people who are asking for the additional child tax credit or the earned income tax credit, which has been a special target for identity thieves. And what we're going to do in that case is we're going to be waiting for the matching documents to come through so that when somebody says they are so-and-so and they deserve this kind of credit, we make sure that whether it's the bank or their employer, we get those documents to match up with they're saying, and in most cases, when it's fraudulent, the documents don't match up, so no need to send out a return. It's clearly somebody who's a fraudster using somebody else's identity.
Yeah, so, and in the past,
that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, in the past they've been able to get away with that, and now you're able to see how.
Yes. The law requires us to send out refunds before we actually get the corresponding documents, but we were able to get some help from Congress in postponing some of these refunds, and they're the ones, like I said, that are especially targeted by these scam artists. So we'll hopefully see a big dent.
All right. Before our time is over with Luis today, we'll talk about other scams that are out there that you should avoid. In the meanwhile, we started here in the office talking about the Shred Day several weeks ago, and immediately somebody said, wait a minute, how long do I have to keep my tax documents? I mean, it was an immediate question. People ask this all the time.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, for the typical person, it's 3 years. If you are looking at maybe if you've got some stocks or you've got financial investments that are you may want to go back and readjust their value depending on the time frame. You want to keep those for a maximum of 7 years.
Okay.
But the typical person is 3 years, and that is, as far as the IRS is concerned, that's as far back as we can go, unless there's fraud. So if you're involved, if you're a bad guy and you're involved in fraud, the statute of limitations for 3 years doesn't count for you. So we'll go back as far as it takes to catch the fraudsters.
Do you recommend keeping those as paper records or scanning them?
Whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you keep them electronically, we ask that first you make sure that they're retrievable, so that, for example, if you are keeping an electronic record on a floppy disk, well, we hope that you have the software and the hardware to read that floppy disk to be able to get it off. The software, hardware is constantly changing, so we want to make sure that you're able to, if you really want to keep that record, that you're able to get to that record. And secondly, we also want to make sure that you are encrypting it, so that in case you have it on your computer, you lose your computer, it's not something that, or in some cases you may have an old computer that happens to have somewhere where you normally don't look to clean something up, and you donate it. It's out there, and somebody has access to all your personal documents. So
Yikes. Yeah.
We want to make sure you encrypt it.
Luis Garcia is here from the Internal Revenue Service. We'll talk more about how to take advantage of getting rid of some of these things, IRS tax records and things that might be cluttering up your life, but you'd like to get rid of them safely. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute on WBCK. WBCK, Luis Garcia with us this half hour on WBCK, our Shred Day with OMNI Community Credit Union on Saturday. And so, in case it isn't clear, obviously, if you've kept your paper tax records for a number of years and you're ready to get rid of them, you're just not going to throw those in the trash and tie the top of the bag and off to the Herbie Kirby. This is not the way to do it, right, Luis?
No, absolutely shred them. I go anytime there's any kind of personal record. I mean, even before working with the IRS, I've always been a little paranoid, and in the Marine Corps, we learned, shred, burn, pulp, put it in water, turn it into pulp. I'm very concerned anytime there's any kind of record out there. Because people can assemble these pieces. And that's one of the things that ID thieves do, is it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle or a mosaic, where they take these little bits of information that you're leaving online or that companies sell. And if you add to it by leaving something in the trash that they can pick out, and it can be all sorts of ways. It doesn't get to the right disposal area, and it blows away. Or somebody is picking in your trash trying to find something valuable, and they see a bunch of personal information that maybe they won't use, but somebody they know will use. So you have to be really, really careful with these documents and shredding. If you don't want to pick the neighbors off with putting a bunch of paper in your barbecue, shredding seems to be the most logical way to do it, because these pieces of information, even though it might be just the cover sheets of your tax documents, all these things can be assembled carefully, and somebody with a good credit rating, somebody with a decent income that files taxes on a regular basis, and hey, perfect. I'm going to beat you to the punchline. Lard up your tax return with a bunch of fake credits, and make your life very difficult. But I'll get this big tax return, a tax refund, by falsifying myself as you, and you helped contribute to it because you didn't get rid of your documents appropriately.
Luis Garcia is here from the IRS. We're talking about trying to avoid exactly what he describes. Luis Garcia with us. A few more minutes this half hour on WBCK from the IRS. So maybe we have scanned in some of those old documents, Luis, and so it's electronic, or we've filed electronic, and somehow that's what we have. When we take those old computers or old drives to be recycled, do we feel comfortable just handing those over?
No, you have to be very careful and make sure that if it's an old computer or a backup drive or a tablet, that just deleting the file isn't going to remove them. Make sure that you're using software that's going to wipe the drive completely. Even mobile phones. Make sure that you're using whether it's an app or whether it's a specific software that's going to wipe that completely off your computer, because these things stick around, either as a backup file, or you may think, well, I know what, when I look at the drive on my computer, I know where my files are, but there may be images or backups under different names that you're unaware of, and somebody who knows what they're doing, whether it's for just snooping around or somebody who's doing it maliciously, can easily go to a secondhand store, buy your old computer, your old tablet or smartphone, plug it in and start digging and see what they can find. So make sure that you're using the proper software or app to wipe your drive completely of any personal information.
What if the computer you were using just dies? I've got an old one that sits around the house because I'm afraid to let go of it. It's got a cracked motherboard in it, and so it doesn't work anymore. But the hard drive is in there. I don't remember what's on it. How do we deal with that?
The best thing to do is to take that hard drive out and physically destroy it.
Yeah,
that's the key is, and there have been techniques where people say, just put a strong magnet around it.
Yeah.
Or the best thing to do is, especially if you have the chance to go to a place where they're going to shred it up for you or chop it up for you. That is the best thing to do, is to physically destroy the old disk and make sure that nobody can get at it.
All right. Before you go, let's talk about the scams that you're consumed with right now that we should be watching for.
Oh, boy. Two big scams. If you have students, be aware that these scam artists are now calling students and telling them they need to pay a federal student tax, which does not exist. And a lot of young people are getting duped into paying this tax because these scam artists know how to hit very hard and very quickly, and they scare young people into paying these this false tax and scamming them out of their money. And the next one is it's not coming over your phone, but it's coming through your inbox in email, and it's a fake IRS bill related to the Affordable Care Act. So it's basically saying you do or you don't have health insurance, and there's a tax that you have to pay, and it looks like a real CP 2000, a real IRS notice, except it's coming in your inbox, and it's requiring you to pay between a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. It looks legitimate, but we will never send you a tax bill out of the blue through your email. So it's very rare that the IRS is going to be, you're going to be dealing with the IRS over email, but you will know who you're dealing with before that ever starts. So if you just get one out of the blue, it's a scam. Don't click on anything. Don't respond to anything. Just ignore it, or you can send it to the IRS at phishing, which is phishing@irs.gov. Forward us that scam email so that we can find these guys and figure out what they're doing and shut them down. So
is it fair to say that if you ever get anything from the IRS that you can check online or call you to make sure it's legit?
Absolutely. That's one of the techniques that the scam artists use is to scare you with a threat. And remember, the IRS will never threaten you. No matter what you've seen in movies, no matter what you hear from people, IRS is never going to threaten you with arrest or anything like that. And secondly, the IRS is not going to demand that you pay immediately. You're always going to have the option to review, and it's your right as a taxpayer to understand what you owe and understand what your options are to owe and understand what your payment plans are available to you. So we're never going to come to you got to pay right now, and if you don't, we're going to send the sheriff or the whatever these scammers are saying. So you've got options. If you get a call and you're scared, call us at 800-829-1040, 800-TAX-1040, and talk to somebody, and 99.9% of the time it's going to be a scam.
All right, so you heard him there. The IRS is not going to threaten you ever. and they're not going to come out of nowhere and say, you need to pay now. So if that's what you're hearing, it's probably not legit, and you need to call the IRS and make sure that that is the case. All right, Luis, thank you as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Luis Garcia, Internal Revenue Service on WBCK.